Hello, we'll be doing a big fancy drop zone thing today. There'll be a few variations in here, so we'll go through that all first. The game is going to start with a round of Flightwing. It's 210 points because that is the minimum needed to fit in 3 PHR aircraft. The table will have pre-deployed fauna, 3 daggers and buildings, an apex in the middle, and 3 maulers. We will be using the rules from Reconquest 2 for these when available, so the fauna will activate at the start of round 2 even though they will be on the table for round 1. We will be playing with the beta rules. If you're unfamiliar with them, it's a set of rules that was in testing prior to the release of version 2. I have never played with them, and in fact I've only played one round of version 1 a while ago that I don't remember too much from. I also don't have any of the command cards for the version 1 rule set that would apply to this, so we're playing without any of those. So basically all that just means is we're probably going to screw some shit up, and that's fine. The scenario will be ground control at 1500 points, with the high ground variant, meaning infantry contribute more to control. The winner of the Flightwing round will be the one who controls the apex, and any of the surviving aircraft will determine the number of available airstrikes for the drop zone armies. So if you only have one left, then you just get one airstrike, and so on. As the newer aircraft don't have rules in the beta set, I'm just going to say that all airstrikes are either Athenas if it's PHR, or Hellhawks if they are resistance. The scenario specifies direct deployment, and each faction gets their corner. And for one last thing, we will be using the underground hangar rules, meaning an aircraft can go in one and pop out the other. PHR's Flightwing consists of an Artemis and 2 Athenas. PHR Command Group has 2 Harriers with a CP3 commander, accompanying them is 2 Apollos and 2 Thors, all in a Poseidon. And there's 2 squad of 2 Jedi, each in their own Triton. Infantry is 2 squads of Immortals, each in a Juno with the Huntsman cannon and a Neptune. And then 2 sets of Long Reaches, each in their own Triton. The Special Group is 2 squads of Valkyries, each in a Triton, and then a Tyrannus squad and a Neptune. First Armor Squad, 2 Phobos and a Neptune. Second Armor Squad, same thing. Resistance Flightwing, Hellhawk, a Tempest, and a Lifthawk pretending to be a barrel bomber, plus 2 close calls. Command Group is an Alexander CB2 and a Lifthawk, 2 Mehmeds and Lifthawk, and 2 squads of 2 Freeriders, each command of a Drill, which I do not own the model of, so they're going to fall from space in an escape pod that can somehow go back into space. Infantry, 3 squads of 2 fighters, each in a Jackson, with the Spider Mine upgrade, and a Lifthawk. Special Squad is 2 Ravens, each carrying a squad of Marine Force Recon, and definitely not models I'm proxying because I own no UCM. First Armor Squad, 3 AA gun wagons and a Kraken, and 2 Cyclones. And the other Armor Squad, just the AA gun wagons. PHR gets initiative and goes first. Athena goes all in on destroying a building on the Resistance side, inflicting 9 damage, but suffering 1 hit from AA. Tempest intercepts, taking evasive maneuvers to keep itself safe out in the open, and it hits with everything, but fails to damage the Athena despite using 1 close call to reroll one of them. The second Athena comes in and continues the work of the first, doing more damage to the building. Hellhawk enters up the side, facing off against the Athena, and downs it with a Cobra missile, getting 1 VP. PHR retaliates by blasting the Tempest out of the sky, which fails its evasive maneuver saves. Also, with the Shooting Star missiles, inflicts 5 damage on the Dagger building. And lastly for the round, a Barrel Bomber drops a frag barrel on a Mauler and obliterates it, getting 1 VP. End of round 1, and I'm down 1-2, but we both lost 1 aircraft. Round 2, and Resistance is up. The Barrel Bomber makes its move to the large building on the PHR side and inflicts a bunch of damage to it. The Athena flips around and takes damage from dangerous maneuvers, but destroys the building while missing shots on the Hellhawk, getting 3 VP. The Hellhog makes a move over towards the large building to assist with demolition, but takes 1 AA damage in the process, and bringing it down to a single hit point. Artemis clears out the forest closest to the resistance deployment zone, and gets another 3 VP for doing so. I'm up pretty big in VP, but the resistance aircraft are a bit more survivable, so we'll see how it goes. Round 3, resistance goes again. The Hellhog makes some sharp turns to double back on the Athena, and blasts out of the sky with its second Cobra missile, getting a VP. Artemis looks to take out the barrel bomber before it activates, and misses every single shot. Barrel bomber has to do a special maneuver to stay in range of the building, so can't dive bomb, but still manages to hit with its second frag bomb, and takes out the building. End of round 3, and resistance has closed the gap pretty well, but the barrel bomber's out of bombs, and the Hellhog is out of AA missiles, so we'll see what happens. Round 4, and the final round, PHR goes up. My attempt to knock the last 2 points off the barrel bomber fails, and I only do 1, leaving 2 resistance activations. With no AA missiles left, leaving only ground targets available, and a seeming PHR victory coming, the Hellhog goes for the Apex to try to deny that prize, and manages to knock it down to 1 point remaining. The barrel bomber now has a choice between attempting to shoot down the Artemis, which would require a dangerous maneuvers test on only 1 point of health, or try to take down the Apex and tie the game as well as deny the PHR any chance of getting that Apex. And it fails to do either. And with round 4 coming to an end, that is the close of the Flightwing segment. PHR gets the victory, and with it the Apex, but only 1 attack run versus Resistance that gets 2 attack runs. I did accomplish my objective of clearing out some of the garrisons around the Resistance deployment corner, while they did similarly, but only destroyed 1 building while I got a building in a forest. To be honest, I was kinda hoping the Apex would die because now I have to figure out how to transfer its rules from version 2 back to the older ones. But I'll do that between the games now. First round kicks off with PHR getting initiative. The scenario has direct deployment, so all the dropships get jammed at the edge of the 12-inch radius of deployment. Resistance does likewise. In first activation of the game, Phobos drop down and shoot at some scenery because that's all they can do. Resistance deploys AA as well. And the Kraken abuses a forest because, why not? Valkyries make their move against the Dagger building, so we'll see some CQB happening in there. Also, the Neptune shoots at a Mauler, which I'll get into why later, but that's kind of a mistake on my part. Resistance get their infantry down as well and spread them around a couple of garrisons. The Immortals start making their way towards all those Resistance fighter groups and stay aboard their Neptune. The rifle teams position themselves in some buildings that give some good line of sight. Just noticing that the caption doesn't make any sense here, but it's the armor group, and the Resistance take down some fauna. Phobos drop down, take some pot shots at gun wagons, and don't really accomplish much there. The Ravens split up with 1 going to each corner of the board. So PHR command group activates, does its thing, and there are 2 pretty major mistakes here that both have to do with not understanding the rules of the current version we're playing with. First, I shouldn't be trying to shoot the Maulers at all. The version 2 rules are the ones that I have in mind, but the version 1 rules that we're playing with has the Mauler targeting the unit with the highest damage points. And that's going to be the Alexander, so I should just let them run free. The second mistake is jamming my Heras right up against that building, and you're going to see later what that does. And the Thors join the Tyrannus in that corner to make a nice artillery battery. And lastly, for the command group, the Janus move up and try to get some line of sight for said artillery battery, and also manage to ping a fighter group with collateral. Oh, and also a Poseidon puts a dent into one of the AA wagons. Now Resistance command activates. Alexander tries to bring down the Apex, but thanks to the evasion of it, doesn't really do much. And the Meds have their eye on those long reach buildings. With its main cannon, Alexander starts working away and inflicts quite a bit of damage to the rifle teams in there. And so ends round 1 with what I think are some pretty aggressive deployments. And the start of round 2 triggers the first fauna sequence. The daggers in that damaged empty building jump into the forest to hunt down those fighters. And I think I underestimated what those daggers are capable of. Also, please ignore that I wrote CGB. Mauler is next, and it makes its move as far as it can towards the Alexander, but does manage to stop right next to the Apex and attacks it. but misses everything. Also, just to note, we weren't really sure what order to activate these in, so they were rolled randomly and happened to be Dagger's Mauler Apex. Apex is up and I get to directly control it, so I take out an A wagon and the Apex recovers 1 point of damage thanks to the regeneration. And on to initiative, where Resistance wins this round. Command group is up first, and a bunch of transports shuffle around. Alexander wipes out a Phobos, crits on the Apex and brings it down to 1, and the Mehmeds miss shooting at the Phobos. While the original plan was to use Mehmeds to bring down some of those buildings with the rifle teams on them, I think the priority was to stop my Phobos from shooting down the Ravens that had the MFRs in them. And lastly, the drill pops out in the back corner, and the free riders hop out and then go to a forest, which it turns out was a big mistake yet again because of differences between version 2 and version 1.5.4, 2.5, whatever the hell it is. Next, I activate my Phobos and do exactly what they try to prevent and bring down that Raven. One of the MFR die, and the other is deployed out in the open. Next, they activate their special group to get that MFR that's out in the open into safety inside a building, and the other group deploys while the Raven dives back into cover. And now, looking to secure myself on this quarter of the board, I dump all of my immortals into one of those fighter-containing buildings. Alongside that, I try to damage the Mehmeds and do absolutely nothing. And Resistance gun wagons bring down a Triton, and one Janus is lost in the crash, while the other hides behind the forest. Cyclones managed to score a direct hit right in that blob of walkers, but bad damage rolls means only puts 1 point on a Hera and 1 point on Apollo, and one of the Beowulf missiles is fired at the Mauler but just goes wide. PHR command group, and a Janus gets a nice crit on one of those Cyclones, bringing it down in a single hit. The other Janus tries to replicate that, but just puts a regular hit through. Walkers largely hold their position and try to take them on meds, but only put 1 on each, and the Thors start what's going to be a chain of disappointments missing on the meds. And free Tritons start looking to enter those underground hangars. Infantry activate, and we start getting some close quarters battles happening. In the Immortal building, the fighters are wiped out, and in the dagger-containing fortress, daggers manage to get killed, but the fighters take a few hits. And both groups are supported by some of those spider launchers from the Jacksons, which helps a little, but those Immortals are just too much for 2 groups of fighters to handle. Next, my Phobos managed to roll something like 4 1s, and then the 2 hits that go through do not damage the Cyclone, so good job. The other Resistance Armor group goes and shoots down the Neptune. And my Valkyries take aim at those free riders. And this is another thing where rules differences between versions are screwing with us. In this version of the rules, you always have to leave at least 1-to-1 parity with any opposing fighters in a garrison. While in version 2, you can take a fortitude test to leave, and that's what we had in mind. So those free riders are now stuck and ready to get slaughtered by the Valkyries. Additionally, the original plan was to have them hop out next turn and start throwing sticky mines at the artillery. However, in this version, you cannot fire the turn after leaving a garrison. Tyrannus damaged a building, but the MFRs have good dodge saves and collateral did nothing to them. Next, the Valkyries get some pretty good rolls, and the daggers not so much, and they finish off the fauna in that building. And so ends round 2, and we're starting to get some real engagements going. Fauna is up, and the daggers hop into that building, looking to eat some MFR. The Mauler reaches its target, and does some damage to the Alexander. I try to help it along, but the Apex only gets 1 point through to it. Round 3, Resistance goes first. Resistance command goes, and it's our first airstrike, and the Hellhawk is on a game hunt. And now a rather brutal blow to me. I did not anticipate how quickly buildings can be demolished in this version, and so down it went, bringing with it the 2 Heras. In version 2, if you're next to a building that collapses, you just take an energy 10 hit. In this version, if you're next to a building and you're not a large unit, on a 2+, you are obliterated. And half the free riders bravely abandoned their comrades hopefully accomplishing something with this sacrifice. So I activate my command group and hope to get a similarly devastating turn, which is in a sense what happened, just not to my opponent. I lost a Neptune to reaction fire, Janus fails to bring down the Cyclone, the Thors have a pretty awful hit, the Apollos don't get through to the Mehmeds, but I do manage to kill an AA wagon, yeah. Operation Jam Some Tritons into the Holes does continue unabated. I, however, do lose another Neptune to reaction fire in the process of moving things. Resistance armor goes, and at least I do manage to down the Cyclone to my own reaction fire. I activate my special group and easily kill off those free riders while moving one of the Valkyrie groups up the board. The Tyrannus fire their artillery at the forest with the Janus spotting for it, and I am surprised at just how much damage a Daisy Cutter can do with these rules. The sheer amount of collateral just obliterates the fighters in the forest. The Resistance Special Group has some MFR and daggers chewing on each other. The others just remain in their building. My other armor group goes, walks up a bit, and brings down a Lift Hawk, hoping to stop any repositioning of those Mehmeds. The Resistance gun wagons, having already shot with reaction fire at the Neptune earlier, just look to hide from the Juno cannons. My other armor group, with its lone Phobos, sees the Mehmeds, gazing lovingly at that building it's right next to, and moves over an inch. The Resistance fighters bark into the Jackson and hop onto the Lift Hawk, looking to hopefully contribute something towards scoring on the adjacent board quarter. Lift Hawk did a pretty good job of killing both the Juno and pinging an Immortal. PHR infantry goes, and the Immortals take cover within their building, while the Juno speeds over and finishes off an AA wagon. And I forgot to take a picture of it, but the rifle teams just shot and failed to damage the Mehmeds. End of round 3, which saw quite a bit of death on both sides. A lot of infantry died for the Resistance, but the PHR command group is pretty well neutered. Fauna do their final activation with the last dagger group getting killed by the MFR, but not before inflicting a few points of damage. And for the third turn in a row, Resistance gets initiative. Their command group activates, and the second half of the slow airstrike commences. A Janus is killed, and a Phobos takes 1 point of damage, and reaction fire fails. And a bunch happens here. The Alexander gets a little bit of a movement boost from a Lift Hawk, then drops and manages to kill a Thor with a shot, but thanks to the disembark penalty, does not kill the other Janus. Mehmeds, although they would like to shoot the building, prioritize taking out my artillery. So they kill the Tyrannus and manage to bring the other one down to 1. And the Free Riders now have a chance to actually do something, and they get 1 point into a Thor. And so my command group activates so that I can get my first and only attack run in. The Athena does bring her down that Lift Hawk, but the cruise missile rolls a 1 to damage the Alexander. The Thor gets another awful hit roll, but the scatter does go from one Mehmed right to the other, so it does successfully kill the Mehmed, unfortunately not getting both as originally planned. And lastly, various failed shooting between bad damage or bad hit rolls, but the Poseidon does get another point of damage into the Alexander. Plus, one more Triton goes down. The Resistance Armor Group does shoot down my Athena, which is unfortunate, and gets a point of damage into a Juno from a Kraken shot. My special group is up, and the Valkyries move to the edge of the forest to fire their SMGs directly at the Free Riders in the open, wiping out one base. And the Mehmed continues its refusal to die with the Tyrannus shot bouncing off. And the hull beckons yet another Triton that can't quite make it there. Resistance Armor Group that has nothing left but a single AA wagon decides to start peppering fire into the Poseidon, getting both hits and both damaging. My lone Phobos fires at the Free Riders, but thanks to both their evasion and the dispersed formation, only gets 1 point of damage into it. Their special group is up, and the MFR decide to move into the forest to take down those Valkyrie. Armor group only has its miniguns because it reaction fired earlier, so it just shoots at a forest, cause meh. The infantry group just kind of bides its time, moves around a little, but does kill off that one base of Immortals that was on 1 hit point left. Now my infantry activate, and the Juno does get a shot off at a wagon, but the Immortals don't want to expose themselves since they hidden in the building. The rifle team, however, does succeed at shooting down the last free rider base. And now at the end of round 4, things are looking a little roomier on the table. There's been quite a few casualties so far. And Resistance continue their hot streak of initiative wins. And of course up first is the command group just to get that second airstrike in. They try to take down my artillery, but don't accomplish anything there, while getting brought down to 1 damage point thanks to my Phobos reaction fire. Mehmed fires at the Apollos. The main cannon crits on one and kills it, but the smaller cannon misses the other damaged Apollo. Meanwhile, its machine gun fires at the rifle team that's at the edge of the building and finishes off a base. And the Alexander kills that Tyrannus that's out in the open. And now my command group gets a bit of revenge with the Apollo doing a point-blank shot into the back of the Alexander, taking it down. The Janus, however, doesn't get that last damage point from the Hellhawk, while the other does succeed at killing the Raven. The Thor shells that one building with an MFR in it, and we get our first fire. All the collateral is dodged by the MFR, however. Resistance infantry activates, and the fighters join the MFR in that forest. Between them and the spider launchers versus just a few bases of Valkyries, it's kind of a bit of overkill, honestly. I think we both underestimated how good MFR ended up being at CQB. And the Kraken whiffs its shot at the Janus. My Phobos activate and make easy work of the 2 AA wagons. And it's time for the hole. The special group activates for resistance, and it's not even close. The other escapes the fire and looks to dodge any more Thor bombardment by waiting outside for a turn. My infantry activate, and between the Immortal Fire and the Juno Cannon, kill one Jackson. The rifle team finally gets revenge for their fallen comrades and takes down the Mehmed. Resistance armor activates, and the little wagon that could continues to. The PHR armor group activates, and the Phobos just stands there waiting to do reaction fire again at the Hellhawk next round. However, another rules related thing that we didn't realize until after the fact is that the Hellhawk is just going to end its attack run because the command group on the resistance side has been wiped out. And Resistance is out of activations, so I get 2 in a row. And with the special group, the surviving Valkyries move a little towards the center of the board and enter a building. In the roundup phase, the fire spreads a little in the building. Round 5 ends, and there's not too much left on the table now, so the next round is going to come down to moving around to try to claim those quarters. First, we realize that airstrike has to end now, so farewell Hellhawk. And at long last, I win the initiative this round. PHR special activates, and the Valkyrie move up to join the board quarter where all the resistance infantry are clustered. The Neptune and Poseidon try to kill off that gun wagon and don't succeed. Juno tries to down a Jackson but falls short. That one AA wagon actually manages to take out the Poseidon entirely by itself over the course of 3 rounds, so you go. And the Kraken does finally make that kill on the Janus, while the other Kraken kills the other Janus. The Jacksons also activate and try to take some cover from the Immortal Fire. And lastly, for auxiliary activations, the Lifthawk actually kills the Juno and kills a few Immortals out of spite, I suppose. PHR armor goes and only manages to damage the Lifthawk but not take it down. Resistance infantry just relaxes in the shade of the forest. The lone Phobos fires at the Kraken, but all the shots bounce off. And for the final resistance activation, the special group goes and the MFR re-enters the flames, just in order to get that double infantry bonus for scoring. PHR command goes, and the little gun wagon keeps going on. And for one last time, the Thor disappoints, hitting the MFR building, but damaging nothing. And the last PHR activation is the infantry, with the Immortals and the rifle teams just hanging out in their buildings. But at long last, the Triton Swarm is unleashed. 2 are needed from the quarter that has the majority of the resistance infantry in order to counter their scoring. While from the other hangar, 1 stays in that quarter, while 2 make their full move into the resistance deployment quarter. And with that and final scoring, the PHR hold 3 of the 4 quarters, while the other one is at a tie. And with that, PHR victory. So first thing to note, for the Apex, I just took the existing version 2 rules and modified the armor, but after the game I did manage to find some actual experimental rules from the version 1 kind of rule set. And it's pretty similar, but there's a lot more variance and rolling happening, so it still worked out fine. I have to say, overall, I think it's a better rule set than the current 2.0. I'll spend some time later probably writing up my thoughts on it, but for the moment I just want to get the video out. So I'll have a download link down below to the PDF I used for these rules, and if you watched all the way or skipped this or whatever, thanks, have a good one.